All right, so here we go. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to have you all here. We're already up to 80 people, I think. I'm laughing because I'm less happy than if we were doing this in person instead of with me in my kitchen and my dog barking at me to go out for the 7th time today. I'm Toni Lyn Morelli. I am a research ecologist with the USGS at the Northeast Climate Adaptation Science Center and a co-founder of the Northeast RISCC. And I'm really excited to be kicking off our 5th annual RISCC symposium and telling you a little bit about what RISCC is, if you don't know already. And maybe just a refresher if you do. We've been doing a lot of work over the last year, as in previous years. And so we just want to kind of showcase some of that. First, the why we're here is because climate is changing. We can see that, for example, in the warming winters of the Northeast. You can see here, which this figure, which I just recently downloaded, actually kind of made me a little astounded, if you can be a little astounded, that the Northeastern US has warmed in the winter more than 5 degrees since 1970. That's a lot. And you can see that here in this image from Albany since 1970 of how those temperatures have increased. And in particular, that the average is heading toward the freezing line, which means if you live in this region or in a cold region, you, like me, you probably are not as in love with the cold as you are with the things you could potentially do in it and in the snow. And this means we're going to have the cold, but without the snow. We're also seeing changing precipitation patterns. So you can see that even just now in 2021, we had the wettest day on record in many places across the Northeast. And the top 10 wettest days on record over the last, in many places. And so it was a really wet year, but actually there was a whole stretch where it was very dry that you might remember. So we're getting more extremes. And you can see that here. This is the percentage of the US experiencing climate extremes, and especially since around 1980, you can see that that has really gone up and up and up. And those patterns, including finally that the growing season is getting longer, which you can see here in days per decade. So basically the bloom dates are coming 5 days earlier per decade in parts of the Northeast. You can see that all of that can interact with invasive species to make that problem even larger. So you can see those on the top here, and this is a figure from one of our management challenges. I'll be talking about those in a minute if you're not familiar with them. You can see the note that invasive species are able, which tend to be opportunistic, are growing up earlier and staying longer. So we have this extended growing season and the responses to it. Also, you can see here, climate extremes are creating new opportunities for invasions. The warmer weather means that invasives are shifting, for example, from the southeast, the very biodiverse southeast to the northeast, and that invasives are becoming more competitive with warming and higher atmospheric CO2. In the northeast, we also have more new introduction pathways. And then in general, unfortunately, herbicides are less effective with higher atmospheric CO2. Okay, so those are really big problems. And we decided about a little over 5 years ago to see if we could come together to try to solve some of them, or at least work on the problems. The Northeast RISCC was founded by a few of us, including Bethany Bradley, myself, and Carrie Brown Lima, and the leadership team has expanded now to about 15 people. We meet 90 minutes a week. We've been doing that for many years now. And we aim to reduce the compounding effects of invasive species and climate change by synthesizing relevant science, sharing the needs and knowledge of managers, building stronger scientist-manager communities, and conducting priority research. So the RISCC fosters and supports a network of over 625 Northeastern invasive species practitioners, educators, and researchers. Over 625 because it's and pounding every day. we took what we'd learned from the first 5 years and made a guiding principles document that you can find on our website. Like everything else I'm talking about, you can find on our website. And in that, you can see that we focus on boundary spanning, original research, research translation and synthesis, and communication and implementation. And there's also kind of a timeline of where we came from and what we've accomplished throughout the years. So you can check that out as well. What I want to focus on is the paradigm we work under, which is translational invasion ecology. And this is what this meeting would look like if we were together in, this example was at the North American Invasive Species Managers Association's annual meeting, NASMA, and hopefully next year will look like this again. We work under this paradigm of translational invasion ecology, which is an approach that embodies an intentional and inclusive process in which researchers, stakeholders, and decision makers collaborate to develop and implement research via joint consideration of the sociological, ecological, economic, and political context of the problem of invasive species. And this idea is an extension of translational ecology, which I was lucky to be involved in developing, and it has a whole special issue in Frontiers in Ecology and the Environment that you can check out. All these publications are open access, so they're available to you and can be found on our website. Translational ecology is this idea of bringing research and practice together in order to kind of get people out of their silos and eventually accomplish actionable science built on the principles of collaboration, engagement, commitment, communication, process, and working in a decision framing context. So we at the Northeast RISC took these ideas of translational ecology and moved them into this idea of thinking about translational invasion ecology, although this flow diagram really relates to all translational science. So here's kind of a step-by-step process, so that it's not linear, of thinking about starting with identifying the problem or identifying stakeholders and then working across these different ideas. You can see in this flow diagram, by the way, that in blue is practice and red is research, and then the boundary spanners are in these kind of, both colors are in purple. So you can see there's a place at the table for everyone. Times that table has all the people at that together, and it sometimes, for example, for meeting, discussing needs and identifying solutions, and other times people go off into their separate expertise to work on different pieces of these issues. Ultimately, the goal is to produce outcomes and outputs, such as for practitioners, best management practices, reduce negative impacts, for research, peer-reviewed articles and tools, and then for boundary spanners, outcomes and policy recommendations. And then we can loop back as well. In the spirit of translational invasion ecology, we are constantly trying to work together with all of you to understand what are the needs of invasive species managers and what is the capacity of the scientists and the managers to work together. And one of the ways we do this is through surveys. So tomorrow you'll get a survey from us, please fill it out. We use it to define what we'll do for the rest of the year and the next 5 years. We did a formal survey led by Eve Bury that was published a few years ago. And you can see that the RISC community laid out research priorities, which included the list here, you can see in order. And from that, we took that and did research. You'll be hearing about it over the next 2 days, or produce documents. So for example, that resilient native communities priority was turned into a management challenge just recently. Our management challenges are 2-page documents where we all come together for months to really kind of digest all of this very complicated science into just 2 pages that look pretty good, and you can take very little of your busy time to really understand an issue. And so here's one that we worked on resilience, which we're pretty proud of. And another one that was done that I wasn't involved in, but I'm super proud of, on forest pest risk. So we now have great expertise at the Northeast RISC on forest pests. Our most popular management challenge was our climate smart native plants that came out the month that COVID started, I think. So we haven't been able to disperse it quite as well as we wanted in person, but you can see that it had 2,500 downloads in its first year. I think it's had 3,800 now. So it's not stopping people. So you can check that one out as well. So finally, I just wanted to say that we are expanding beyond the region. We've teamed up with scientists and managers across the country, and there are now other RISCs. It's been a really wonderful success of the work that we've all been working toward. There's Northwest, Pacific Islands, and North Central, and burgeoning Southeast RISC, all in part supported by their climate adaptation science centers. And we work together through monthly cross-network calls, representation on each other's advisory boards, and we share concerns, information needs, science priorities. We've actually found they're very similar across regions, which is really interesting. And you'll be hearing from these RISCs tomorrow afternoon. Finally, very exciting, we won a big award this last year. Probably the biggest award in climate adaptation. We won the Climate Adaptation Leadership Award for Natural Resources, specifically for broad participation. This is the AFLA award, and this was in part due to the work we've been doing working across the country, but especially from all of you showing up each year and using the information and providing us with feedback and working together with us to really try to address these problems. Here's some of the things we're thinking about for the next 5 years. And I just wanted to highlight for the researchers in the audience and students in the audience, we're really looking to engage additional researchers conducting certain research on topics or taxa that we are not as strong in. So we tried to highlight that, for example, we have a marine session today because we know that's really of interest. We'd love to take on board, partner up with more marine scientists. We need more scientists that work on biocontrol and some other things. All this information can be found at our website, riscnetwork.org. So finally, I just wanted to highlight what we're doing today and tomorrow on the agenda. So this is me, and this is my slide. We're starting with SCOSH at 12:45, the opening plenary, and then we're moving into the marine session by popular demand. And then we'll have a quick break, and we'll have our favorite session from these past symposiums, our management stories of success and failure in invasive species and climate change management. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a really interesting interactive session led by Indigenous scholar Marie Shaver on questioning our assumptions in a changing future, thinking about invasive species as family. Come back tomorrow, have a quick opening, and then we're going to have panels on managing across scales, carbon consequences of climate change and invasive species, managing across organizations, specifically thinking about floodplain forest restoration. And then we'll end with some research lightning talks and risk lightning talks, and then a wrap up from Bethany Bradley. So it's all very exciting. I just wanted to say that these are big problems, but we all feel energized on the leadership team because we get to come back together, and instead of getting overwhelmed like by this, my son trying to take care of this garlic mustard problem in my backyard, we know that we can all work together to accomplish great things. I'm really glad you're here, all 111 of you, and we look forward to learning from you and learning together.